right. Welcome to FirYAY Friday here at 180. We're going to go ahead and go today's interviewee. We got some special guests. I'm excited for this one. I mean, I'm excited for all of them, but and I love everybody equally. Hey, Patty. All right. Hey. Oh my
What's
gosh,
up?
this is like seeing family that you haven't seen in
Blast from the
years.
past. Except for
Serious.
I've got to go switch my load out, and I will be right back.
All right, go do it. I'll talk to T for a minute.
Okay.
Hey T, how you doing?
Man, I'm good. It's good to see you,
Oh
Jess.
my gosh, dude, it's been a minute. Like
Can you,
when
is this
yeah, I can
picking up okay?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
It's funny because like I was thinking, I'm like, man, I gotta think of people to interview and whatnot. And I'm like, you know what? I wonder if they're available. And then I just had flashbacks to all those concerts and all those shows all
Man, I
over like
love it.
Central Florida. Man, I miss you guys.
We go back a long ways,
We go
actually.
back a minute, dude, and I'm not gonna, show my age or anything, but I was in college. I haven't
Hey,
been
I'm not going to show my age or anything, but if you were in college, then my son is a senior in college. I'll put it that way.
I know, dude, he's grown up. I feel like I literally just watched him grow up through the years. He's in college already?
Dude, he graduates in December. So
Oh my
I know, man. He's
gosh.
6'1", like super tall. I know. It's
Oh
crazy.
my goodness, where did the time go?
I know it, man. Right? Like we've been doing White Collar Sideshow for 14 years.
Yeah,
So
man. I was telling my boyfriend the other day, I'm like, man, the first time I met them it was out random and we went to the show. It was like one of those like Judgment House things, like some church was putting on out in a parking lot. You guys are playing
that's
outside.
right. That it was called the 99. It was a Christian haunted
Yeah,
house
you're
or
right. Yeah, the
something like that.
99.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And
this
I'm
can
like,
happen to you. You better
yeah,
find the
yeah.
Lord.
Yeah. And then you guys are playing just outside the tent. And I remember watching, I'm like, man, I've never seen and still haven't seen an act like you guys. So
Well, thank you.
you,
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm telling you, you guys are still the only ones doing your thing. So,
It's
I,
definitely a blessing and a curse.
yeah, huge. But anyway, so this is a sort of like interview style. I work at a children's home, kids in foster care. And basically, what we do is we use these interviews to kind of just expose them to different things, and then like just share testimonies and just inspire them. Because I mean, these kids they're in a really rough season of their lives, and it's kind of hard for them to kind of see outside of that. So we share stories and encourage them, and yeah, and so. The other day I was thinking, man, I remember hearing yours and Veronica's testimonies. I'm like, oh my gosh, that'd be great for the kids. And then of course some of your more your concert stories would be cool too. But I mean, you could probably kick off just share your coming to Jesus story, because I know that,
Yeah. Oh man.
it's a story.
I'll try not to take too much time.
Good. And hey, as long as you guys want to go, I'm here. I'm catching up with family. So.
Like, well, I grew up in church, but I was like, my parents went to church on Sundays, and we had to get dressed up, and um, I also was like one of the dudes. We went to the Methodist church, so as a kid, I would go up and light the candles and acolyte.
Mhm.
That's what it's called. I
Yeah, yeah,
hardly
yeah.
remember that word, um, but like church for me when I was a kid was not like I don't know, like it was just something to do. Like I was in the youth group or whatever, and that's
Hmm.
back in the '80s. So a lot has changed in culture and church and all that. So I always found church to be boring. But a lot of buddies that I went to school with went to church there, and we would sneak out of youth group and go do crazy things. We'd go get high together. It was the first time I
Hmm.
smoked weed was like a dude in my youth group. But I never thought of it differently. I didn't think of it like, here's what the Lord wants you to do. I just thought church was something that everyone did. It wasn't like a game changing moment.
Hmm.
Um, I had to get dressed up every Sunday. Like I hated it. But
Hmm.
as I went through life, like that was what my family did. Like you go to church. I mean, that's part of the American culture. And when I moved out when I was 18, and man, I never went to church again. Like I hated church. I don't know really what I hated about it. Maybe it was I was like a lot of people, like it's all about rules, it's about money, it's about this and that. I never looked at it like this is a way to teach you throughout the week how to put God into your life, and it took me years to kind of find that. But after I moved out, man, I was playing in different bands. I was really like, I started smoking cigarettes when I was 12. I was a skater. So like a lot of my buddies, we all smoked cigarettes together, and but I never got away from that.
Mm.
So like I got my first factory job after I graduated. I was playing in a band at the time. And I was taking a lot of mini thins. I was taking a lot of anything anybody would give me, like drugs that would speed you up, and definitely drinking a ton. And I was, I was a 19-year-old kid. I could smoke at the factory that I worked at. So I was smoking like 2 packs a day. And then of course, drugs and music. Like I was trying to live like my heroes, Jim
Right.
Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, well, all the dead guys.
All the dead guys. That's right.
All the 27 Club, man. That's what I was into. And of course, a lot of the music I was into was definitely pushing like, violence and the heavy metal world, like everything that you're into. Let's do everything we can. But I think for me, like I had one of my lungs collapse when I was 19 years old, and I got taken to the emergency room, and the doctor was like, are you doing drugs? And I'm like, no. Well, you're smoking. And I'm like, yeah, I smoke. And he's like, look, here's the thing. Like your lung is collapsing because it can't handle the fluid and stuff that's in there. And also like your lifestyle, like you are living a 24-hour-a-day party lifestyle. So you might want to think about changing your lifestyle. And I was like, okay. And they shoved like a tube, like boom, shoved the tube right in my lung and blew it up like a bicycle tire, like to get it back to where it was. Because it had felt like someone had stabbed me in the neck. And I couldn't breathe and I was suffocating. And, sometimes the emergency room doesn't feel like it's an emergency to you or to them. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went back. My lung was fixed and, I was scared, but over time went back to my normal lifestyle, partying and whatever. And then my lung collapsed again. And of course the doctor's like, look, man, we can't keep going through this. Blew it back up, went back out, started partying, and it collapsed the third time. And so the third time the doctor is telling me like, look, dude, if both of your lungs collapse at the same time, you will die. So here's the thing. You have 2 choices. We can do what we've been doing, or we can go into your body and sew and glue that lung into your rib cage so both of them don't fall, because you'll die, you'll suffocate. And I was like, oh crap. And so I was like, well, let's do the surgery. So they cut me open, they cement my lung into my rib cage. And really, like, technology had just changed back then. So used to, they would gut you like a fish. They would cut you all the way down. But now they have cameras, so they were just slicing and putting cameras in different places. And I woke up with a huge, like a pickle jar from Sam's Club, like a giant jar. And in this jar was a tube that was coming from my lungs. And it looked like brains, pus, pink and yellow, black tar. All this was draining from my lung. And the doctor came in and he said, you know what that is? And I was like, no. And he goes, well, this is why your lung collapses, is because you've got all this stuff in your lung. And I was like, no way. So anyway, they fixed me. It takes me months to get back to, and I'm playing drums and playing in a band and working in a factory through all this stuff. And they fixed me, and it takes months to get back to normal. And then it's all of a sudden I'm back to smoking cigarettes, back to doing whatever, because I'm a rock star. I survived. And then when I was about 22, this lung collapsed on my right side.
Oh boy.
Twice or 3 times. I had to go through the same surgery on that side. And so really, like, the doctor was like, hey man, here's the thing. Like, you've had basically 7 lung surgeries. You should think about changing your lifestyle. That was when I was 25 years old. And so I had been through pain medication through my whole years from 19 to 25, dealing with all these lung problems. And I just saw pain medicine as like, this is me. Like, I don't know how to live without it. I don't know if I will ever be normal again. And after about a year, the doctor was like, I can't give you any more pain medication. And I was struggling. Like, man, I have been on something my entire life. I don't know how to be a normal human being on
Right.
something. And at the factory I worked at, there was a Christian, and I went over to Philip, and I knew him as a Christian, but I wasn't really like into Christianity or whatever. It was just like, dude, I know God loves you. Would you pray for me that God would give me $1 million and my life would change,
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, dude, have you ever met Jesus or God? Or you're nuts, man. You're not going to catch me carrying a Bible around, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, all right, I'll be praying for you. And so I went back to my apartment that night, and I was struggling. And I went and stood on top of my apartment building. I was just going to jump off. And I didn't have the courage to do it, but I kind of had this, like in the movie Forrest Gump, where Lieutenant Dan's on that boat, like, it's
Right.
me and you, God. Like, I had this
Yeah.
moment for me too. Like, God, why am I here? What's my purpose on this planet? What do I have to offer? Like, I'm nothing. I'm not doing anybody any good. I'm causing everyone grief in my life. Like, I'm just worthless.
Mm-hmm.
But I still couldn't jump. And I went back to Philip the next day, and early in the morning, and I said, Philip, look, man, I've been through drugs, 7 lung surgeries. I've been through rehabs. I've even been in the state mental institution. And if your God doesn't change my life, then what will I do? And he was like, listen, man, that's not the way God looks at you. He sees your whole life as a story to help someone else realize they're not alone on the planet. And I feel like that's what really touched me right there was, wow, because so many of us feel like we're the only ones on the planet that struggle. When in all reality, there's millions of us going through the same thing. We're just hiding from each other because we
Yeah.
don't talk about stuff. We don't share it with each other. We don't want people to know that we're vulnerable, or we don't want people to know that we're human beings, that we feel this way. We want everyone to see us as perfect people. And and whenever I was on my forklift at the time, a drug addicted forklift driver. He prayed the Lord's Prayer with me on that forklift, and I had one of these ghost hunter Discovery Channel moments where the Lord changed my life.
Wow.
And I never went back to who I was. But on this whole journey, even after I found the Lord, like I have fallen many times. Like, perfection is something you cannot find, and sometimes even you go through stuff and it's been years and you catch yourself almost going back into the same battles that you had. And there's wake up calls that are like, hey, you've already been here. Remember that. Like, you don't want to go through this. You've already learned this lesson. And I feel like the older I get, the less I know. Like, focus and clarity are everything. And I'm thankful for that day. That was the year 2000. And so if you do the math, 25, and that was the year 2000.
Yeah, man, you're only 30 years old. That's right.
So
Yeah.
long story short, really, like, all of our stories and everything that we go through, everything that we struggle with, are really just tools to help other people and friends of ours or family or anybody that we come in contact with. Like, it's just a tool to help each other realize we're not alone on the planet, and that we can use each other to sharpen iron and to help each other grow. And our story becomes that tool. And the story never ends. Like, this story, even for what we're doing, has never ended. That was just really a beginning. And again, I've had super highs and I have had epic fails on this. And my wife has helped pick me back up and said, look, you can go, you can still keep going. Guilt and shame are things that I have struggled with. Suicide. There are many things that go along with that cause struggle. And there are people out there to help us. There's groups out there to help us. There's leaders out there to help us. And there's people in our life sharing stories to help us if we're willing to listen.
No, for sure, man. And like I've told everybody, I'm like, and this awesome guy in the comments saying what a powerful story. It really is. Like, it really echoes with me, because I know for me personally, like, I've made my mistakes, and even mistakes that I've made, like, after like coming to know Jesus. Like, I already knew Jesus, and I was still like making like pretty tremendous mistakes, and that the depression, the shame, the self-loathing that you end up feeling, that it kind of forces you into this place of like, you don't want to talk to anybody. There were things that I did that I'm like, nobody will ever know this about me. I'm gonna take this to my grave. Like no one's ever gonna know this about me. But, over time, you release those things, you give those things over to God, and not that you never struggle again, because I know for me, I still struggle. I still struggle. But, at the same time, God uses that story, to kind of direct people back to Him. Like, if I had, stood by that sort of mentality of like, I'm going to keep this to myself, my struggles and whatever, that I've been through, no one's going to hear about it. There's probably a person out there that needed to hear that story. I'm sure it's happened to you guys where you're at shows that there are some people, you've shared your testimonies. There are people that have heard it who are encouraged and end up giving God a shot. And, the same thing has happened to me. I never thought, God would be able to use my story, and boy, was I wrong. So, I take your lead, my friend, because like definitely during the time when we first met, I was just going through stuff. And like now being on, kind of the other side of things, it's like, oh yeah, now I see why I kind of went through things, because
Yeah.
the people that ends up helped. But now we're gonna talk to your better half.
Hey, J-Dog. Our buddy J-Dog's on. So, J-Dog, what's up, man?
Hey. Cool. Well, Veronica, I'm gonna just, from one fellow female musician to another, I'm just gonna move out of the way and just show off my collection for a second. Look at that right there.
Come on, man. What a
And,
collection.
and there's a bass back there too, so it's like, if you ever get sick, just let me know. I'll go and
Awesome.
there was a time I'm gonna fangirl for a second. There was a time, I'm like, hey man, they don't have a guitarist. I play the guitar. But yeah. Hey, by his house, I'm gonna go play in a band. So anyway, so wait, you guys are you're in Nashville now?
Yeah, we're in Nashville. We've been in
Oh.
Nashville since right after the tornado, right before the world shut down.
We're still living in our vehicle, like that's still our home, but
we came here because it's a great central location for festival season. But then, of course, just about all of our festivals have been canceled. So
Yeah, I know. Well, before we get to like, what you guys have been up to recently, maybe Veronica can share just how you guys came about to being like the band, and like how I love that story, like how
yeah, for sure.
how life looked before, and then the huge leap of faith you all took to do what you do now.
Yeah, we, I don't know if T mentioned, we've been married almost 20 years.
I have not mentioned.
And so we met in October of 2000 and got married in January of 2001. And so it was only 3 months. And we, we didn't know each other. We didn't. And so we spent the first several years of our marriage actually getting to know each other. And I quickly realized we had gotten, like, the internet was still super new at the time. And I had gotten us, like, he got a cell phone, an answering machine, a computer with internet, like, all in the same week. And it was like technology overload for him. But he quickly discovered online pornography. And even then, like, it wasn't anything what it is today, but it was still a huge haunt in his life. And for the first year and a half of our marriage, I just didn't say anything about it. And I honestly thought it was my fault. I thought, well, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not whatever enough for him. So he's having to go and seek this, find this satisfaction online. So finally, literally after about a year and a half, I had had enough of hating myself. I had actually become bulimic in the process, and I was throwing up my food. And we'd go to church on Sunday, and they'd say, how are you guys doing? How are the newlyweds? And we're like, no, we're great. Everything's fine. But had I been honest, I'd have been like, my husband was up all night online looking at women, and I just threw up my donut. We're terrible, but it was just easier to wear a mask and say we're good. And so I had gone to a local Christian bookstore to try to find some resources to help me, because I knew that there was stuff out there for body image and self-hate and things like that. And I stumbled across a section that was men's secret sins and hidden addictions. And I was floored because, like I said at the time, like it's still a very taboo subject today, but 20 years ago, it was extremely taboo. And I start flipping through and I'm realizing like, this is my life. This is our testimony. And so that night he snuck out of bed on cue and came back to bed. And I just said, I know what you're doing. And he broke down crying. He was like, I know, I'm so sorry. And I was like, well, I thought this was my fault. Like, it's because of me, right? And he's like, no. And like, I had to learn that that addiction had nothing to do with me. Well, then probably over the next 2 years, he kept getting up in the middle of the night, but it's because he was having these crazy dreams. And the dreams, he would just wake up and just feel like he needed to write these things down. And he would tell me, like, I feel like we need to invest money into these dreams. And I'm like, okay, tell me about it. And he's like, okay. So there's a pig and he's playing drums. And I'm like, oh, good. You're back on drugs. You got it.
Yeah.
And he's trying to explain to me, like, no, you don't understand. The pig, like, represents me and my filth. And our whole entire first album was concepts based off of these dreams that T had. And he kept just saying, you know, we should invest money. And he was already in a Christian band at the time. And I was managing a multi-million-dollar music company. And ultimately, I was not interested. But July 16th, 2006, a missionary came to our church and essentially asked the question, if your life was a bumper sticker, what would it read? And for me, it was the American dream. And essentially the Lord was like, are you willing to walk away and to give all that up for these dreams that I've given your husband these dreams and I've called him to this, and are you willing to walk away? And I was like, yeah. So I called T. He actually, believe it or not, he was in Minneapolis that weekend.
Wow.
Our drum company is from Minnesota, so sending lots of love to
definitely
all over the world right now, but
definitely
our friends in Minnesota. So much injustice is going on. But I told him, I was like, babe, the Lord told me to jump today. And he was like, okay, where are you jumping to? And I said, well, he essentially confirmed the dreams were all from him. So we're going to sell our house. We're going to sell our cars. I'm going to quit my job and we're going to buy an RV and we're going to take this show on the road. And then he thought I was back on drugs. But it took us about 1.5 years to really do it. Nobody thought we were going to. It was in the middle of the 2008 housing crash. Then we ended up selling our house, and none of it made sense in the world's eyes, and it still doesn't make sense to a lot of people. But we've been going for, we started 14 years ago. We've been touring full time for 12 years now, and this is our third RV that we've lived in, and we've touched 46 states and 20 countries together.
Wow.
Over the last 12 years. Yeah. So
look at that.
It's been incredible. We played hundreds of shows and just had so many unique experiences that we never would have had had we not just been willing and said yes.
Exactly. Yeah, like I don't know if like you even like try to imagine like how your lives would have been had you been like, nah, you know what, I'm good with my my job and my house and my cars. Like it's just so funny how God just like flips our plans upside down. It's like, look at what you're gonna be able to do.
Yep.
So and the lives that you touch, I can't even imagine. So yeah, I'm just gonna go sell all of my stuff and I'm gonna go on the road. So
there you go.
No, but yeah, legit, there are times where I'm like, man, could I do that? And like, if God gave that calling to me, like, could I do that? But
the day before I did it, you could have asked me and I would have said like, no way.
Yeah.
But that the Lord was so clear and so obvious in that moment that this is what we needed to do. Without a doubt, this is what we're doing.
That's
and still,
awesome.
like, even after all these years, I kept thinking the other day, or coming to Nashville, like, well, what happens after White Collar Sideshow? Like, I'm 45 years old. We've been doing this for a long time. For a lot of people, they would think, oh, you should quit by now. And so we're going, like, what happens next? All the shows are getting canceled, blah, blah, blah. And then we have this billboard thing that happens, like we're on a top of a chart. And it's like, wow, here I go from one direction going, I was thinking about what's next, and now it's like, now maybe I should be writing another album. So
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there's different avenues and doors, and you can't see the future of it. The hardest thing is living in the present for any journey that we're on, and trying to have focus and clarity. And I have fallen off that train many times, and so it's really trying to get back to your spiritual, mental, physical, emotional roots, and watering those things, those little basic things, and not being distracted by everything else. Easier said than done.
And let me tell you, there's such a temptation, especially when God has such a calling on your life and really calls you to that, to that obedience, because He sees the big picture and the bigger plan. And I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean like, hey, it's going to be smooth sailing all the time. Like with the student ministry at his house, it's in-house. I came from student ministry training backgrounds and just in urban youth. And I asked them when I first started working there, I'm like, hey, why isn't there a youth ministry here? You got a captive audience. Why don't you do this? And they're like, then you do it. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, you know what? Let me pray about it. And I was praying about it and praying about it. They kept asking me about it. I'm like, let me pray about it. Finally, this lady tells me, look, you need to stop praying about it, just do it. And so we did it. And there were seasons where it was like we had as little as maybe 2 or 3 kids come through. And then other times where we had like 40, 50 kids come through. And in those like low seasons, you're like, well, maybe this has run its course. Maybe we're done. And then God in his faithfulness will, you'll hear a story from one kid like, oh, I love 180. It's the only place I actually feel loved. It's the only place where I actually feel like I matter. And then it's like, okay, God, all right, I'll keep going. And then here we are 6 years later. And now here we are in a pandemic trying to make it, give them some hope still.
Yeah.
So I feel you, man. Like, those moments where you're like, maybe this is done. Maybe it's time to move on from this. And then God's like, nope, I still got use for you.
Yeah.
There's still people that need to hear your story, and there's still, music that they need to hear to give them hope. So we're both locked in to this. We're all locked in. So, okay. So whenever I talk to people who are in music and touring and whatnot, I got to hear the crazy stories. All right. So I know you got, for what, 12 years of touring, that you've got some crazy stories. So when you think of crazy story, what's that one story that you kind of default to as in like, wow, that was crazy?
I think probably in 2013. Well, first of all, we played in New Zealand in January, which was crazy.
Yeah.
That March, we were driving to California, and long story short, our RV diesel engine blew up. Absolute worst case scenario. And we got a quote, and it was like $23,000 to repair it. And we don't charge for our shows. We just live off love offerings and donations. And so we always said, like, Lord, we'll continue to do this, but you've got to continue to provide the funds. And we're like, we don't have $23,000. So we really thought we were done. Like, it was over. Well, we put the quote out there on Facebook just to show people what we were dealing with. And in 12 days, people from all over the world, including New Zealand, sent money. We didn't even ask. We just basically were like, hey, it's like our engine blew up. We're pretty much done. Sent enough money to cover the $23,000 bill.
Wow.
We were back on the road.
It was
Look
so
at
crazy.
that.
Yeah, that's a very, very long story short. But
Yeah. I think I remember that story too. I think I might have even sent money too. But yeah, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Look at God. Look at God's faithfulness. You guys aren't done. That's awesome.
Now what? I guess we're not done. We were kind of like, okay, well, that was a good run. We did a good 5 years, and no, he was not done. So
yeah, you could do like T's. Like, I guess I got to write another album. Guess I'll write another one.
Oh, man.
That's good. That's good. All right. Well, yeah, you mentioned that you guys are, you're on Billboard. like you got that Billboard stuff happening. Like, wow.
It's the Twilight Zone. 2020 is officially the Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
That's why, yeah,
we
2020
don't
is
even
just
know how
weird.
to feel about that. I had some people message or call today that were like, man, congratulations. Like, this is, it's so big. And in my mind, I can't fathom it because, we're still living in our RV. We're still trying to figure out what the next step is. And in my mind, I'm like, well, this is just more fuel for the fire. Like, at least something's happening now that's kind of pushing us and keeping us going. And it is a strange, like, it's just hard to, like, our label was like, you guys need to go celebrate. You need to go
Mhm.
out and celebrate. And what we had a protein shake, I think. So,
That's good.
It's
That's a good.
close.
Woo.
I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
so it's just hard to see it, as other people see it. For us, it's like, man, we've been working for 14 years, and finally something like this is kind of like a bless. It's just a payoff. It's a blessing. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
cool. Like, here's something that kind of, I don't want to say you should get recognition, but at the same time, it's like, oh wow, someone has taken notice of
Mhm.
this, and man, it's just super humbling.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it's like, well, now what? How are we going to get the next song on the on the charts or what? It's just,
Right.
it's a never-ending cycle. But ultimately, it's encouraging that all of this is happening and going, all right, now there's a little bit of spark to keep moving forward and keep, especially through everything that's happening in the world. And so I'm super grateful to our record label for pushing all those things. And Veronica is, I mean, if it wasn't for her hard work, she is the manager of all managers. She does everything for us and never sleeps, and takes my crazy ideas, and if they're not great, she rearranges them to push them even further. And she,
Mhm.
I just can't thank her enough, man. She is the ultimate all in, cards on the table
Oh,
teammate.
I was gonna say he's a keeper. You know he is.
He is.
That's
20
definitely.
years.
I'm super grateful for her, man. My epic fails, she picks me up and she's like, all right, you failed. Let's get up. Let's start working out. Let's start eating right. Let's get back in shape. Let's start drumming. Let's start writing. Let's start pushing. I mean, she's such a rock in all of this,
Mm.
especially with my scattered, crazy brain. I mean, it's just, all the time in all these different directions, and it gets so wound up. And she's just kind of like, her brain has all those different directions, but she knows how to multitask. I just
Yeah.
don't have that ability.
Man, you guys are like relationship goals, and I would say like when I grow up, I want to be like Veronica. There you
Oh,
go. I said it. But I don't wanna hold you guys up too much longer. So tell me what's going on lately? How have you been doing with this whole pandemic? How can we support you? Like what's on the horizon for you all?
Yeah, I think the what's crazy about the pandemic is that we have been living this way for 14 years. So we have been, we live in a vehicle. We live off very little. We've learned how to stretch a dollar. We've learned how to basically live a minimalistic, survivalist lifestyle. So when
Hmm.
all this hit, it really didn't affect us personally that much because we've been living like this. We've been like,
Hmm.
where's the direction, Lord? Where's finances going to come from? Where's all this going to happen? And it almost felt like the whole world jumped into our bathtub.
Yeah.
And it was
Uh-huh.
like, wow, everybody's searching for answers now. You know, and it felt good, like, for a minute, like, wow, we're all in the same boat. We're all trying to figure things out together. But as the world starts to open back up, people will go back to their normal lifestyles, and we'll still be the ones like,
Hmm.
okay, what are we doing here? Um, so, like, it hasn't been challenging in that aspect. I think the performance part of it is hard because we released an album last year. If you go to whitecollarsideshow.com, you
Hmm.
can get all of our music. You can see all of our videos. You can see what we do. We're a nonprofit. You can donate to us, and it's all tax deductible. We don't charge for shows. So everything that we make just goes right back into what we do. And that goes for concerts too. It goes for how we live. And so if there's anyone out there wondering about supporting us, man, that's a place you can go search. Or if you Google White Collar Sideshow, you'll find our Facebooks and Instagrams and everything like that, and keep up with our crazy life.
Awesome. Definitely. I mean, yeah, I mean, I support you guys too. Been a long-standing fan all those years, and again, I'm not gonna date myself. But thank you guys so much for just taking the time to just talk, share, about what's going on with you now. And again, I was so excited about this. It's me and one other person that'll do these interviews, and I'll be like, no, I got to do this one. This is so exciting. Again, it's like reconnecting with family, and I can't wait for you guys to come back down to Florida. Any place Florida, I'll drive.
Awesome.
We will. We want to.
For sure. I think there was one point where I was like so close to booking you, so close. So man, when I get a chance, I will. But thank you guys again. Stay in touch. And any way that we can pray for you, or anything at least now.
Yeah, I mean, always finances, and really just in continued direction, focus, and then also in general, like everything that's happening on the planet right now is man, it's heartbreaking, and I feel like if we could just pray for more love, grace, and mercy,
definitely,
just for general out there.
Yep.
Maybe we can start, I don't know, bridging the gaps.
Definitely. Well, I love you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we'll reconnect soon.
All right, Jess.
Love you guys.
Love
Bye.
you too. Bye.